The campaign against carbon dioxide emissions picks number 350. Campaigners or protesters against global warming have drawn on an arsenal of visually startling tactics over the years, like scaling smokestacks at coal-fired power plants. On Saturday, they tried something new with the goal of prodding countries to get serious about reaching an international climate accord or agreement. A synchronized burst of more than 4,300 demonstrations from the Himalayas to the Great Barrier Reef, all centered on the number 350. For some prominent climate scientists, that is the upper limit for heat-trapping carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, measured in parts per million. If the gas concentration exceeds that for very long, they warn, the Earth can expect decades of disrupted climate patterns, rising sea levels, severe droughts, and famine. The current concentration is 387 parts per million and still rising rapidly. Organizers said their goal in the prelude to global climate talks in December was to illustrate the urgent need to cut emissions by pointing out that the world passed the 350 mark 2 decades ago. Yet while agreeing that unabated or uncontrolled emissions pose serious risks, some prominent scientists and economists focusing on climate policy said the 350 target was so unrealistic that the campaign risked not being taken seriously or could convey the wrong message. 350 is so impossible to achieve, but to make it the goal risks the reaction that if we are already over the cliff, then let's just enjoy the ride until it's over, said John M. Riley, an economist at MIT. The message needs to be that there are risks at the current level, and those risks increase the further we push the system, he said. In a prominent recent study, scientists concluded that carbon dioxide levels were almost certainly headed beyond any levels experienced on the planet in the last 15 million years. Again, in a prominent recent study, scientists concluded that carbon dioxide levels were almost certainly headed beyond any levels experienced on the planet in the last 15 million years. Michael Oppenheimer, a former scientist for the Environmental Defense Fund, who is now at Princeton, said it would be a huge accomplishment to hold concentrations below 450 parts per million in decades. But Bill McKibben, the author and activist who founded 350.org, the group coordinating the protests, defended its approach, saying that settling on a concrete goal, articulated as a number, was the only way to build a global community for climate action. We need to be thinking about reducing, not just going up more slowly, he said. 350 is a number that says wartime pudding. Let's see how fast we can possibly move. Let's hope against hope that it's fast enough. Mr. McKibben spent Saturday morning in an office in downtown Manhattan with 20 volunteers coordinating an accelerating flow of videos and photographs from other time zones that captured demonstrations planned in 170 countries. Some participants had gotten a head start. On Friday, thousands of students assembled in a plaza in Ethiopia were waving 350 placards. Grinning American soldiers in eastern Afghanistan emailed photographs of a 350 fashioned from sandbags. Robert J. Bruhl, a sociologist at Drexel University, who analyzes environmental campaigns, expressed a mixed view of the 350 campaign. It represents a new wave of civic environmentalism, but has proved vital to solving problems, he said. But that approach was abandoned long ago by many big environmental groups, but now focus mainly on legislation and litigation. But Dr. Bruhl questioned the core symbol and message of 350.org. He suggested that it might be too technical, but it focused on deeply cutting emissions without providing a clear path for accomplishing the task. Nonetheless, the effort has been endorsed by dozens of prominent figures, including James E. Hansen, a NASA scientist who has been most closely associated with defining the climate threshold as 350 parts per million. He has campaigned for halting emissions from coal burning altogether by 2030. Mr. McKibben of 350.org said it was up to national leaders to assume a moral obligation to match their actions to the science. On Saturday, as the pictures flowed in via email and the web, he noted that there were hardly any showing celebrities or officials. Ordinary people are just haunted by this, he said. Now they're saying one thing very loudly and very beautifully. Gavin A. Schmidt, a climate scientist who works with Dr. Hansen and manages a popular blog on climate science, realclimate.org, said those promoting 350 or debating the number might be missing the point. The situation is like people trying to embark on a cross-country road trip to California, but they started off heading to Maine instead, Dr. Schmidt said. But instead of working out ways to turn around, they decide to argue about where they're going to park when they get to L.A. If you ask a scientist, how much more CO2 do you think we should add to the atmosphere, the answer is going to be none. Again, if you ask a scientist how much more CO2 do you think we should add to the atmosphere, the answer is going to be none. So in other words, climate change, global warming, whatever you want to call it, whatever it be called, is already well along, is already very far advanced in the atmosphere or upon the earth. The parts per million number is already above the threshold that many scientists say is too much. So, humans or humanity, the nations of the world, can expect more climate change to come, more severe weather patterns that are changing rapidly. And of course, nobody knows exactly how or where, how it will all end up, how it will play out, because climate change is an exact science. Climate changes like these have never really been witnessed or measured before. Not in any modern times. But there is more to come. And there's more to find out. And on top of all this, there's something much more going on. Much more than this even. And these are more signs of the end times transition days. The transition is also a process, ongoing, happening daily, all around the world.